I realize a lot of people don't know where I come from, so I thought I'd give a quick preamble to explain who I am, and I won't go too long into detail. Just a little bit of a path how I got into the beachy realm, and also how I end up at the ministers' meeting. Quick background: I don't come from um, Anabaptist background. My name is spelled Argo, not Yoder, and I was in the military. I did a whole military career. I became a born again believer in the military, not knowing what to do. I stayed in the military, never went to combat, and uh, in the military, uh, didn't know what to do as far as careers or anything. So I stayed in and did a part-time ministry. I did youth work for 20 years. Did Young Life, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Youth for Christ. Did all these ministry. In parallel with that, the Army turned me into a techie, sent me back to graduate school twice. So I have 2 degrees in information technology and was developing simulations for the military. 20 years ago, I was looking into getting a patent for an idea, which is now, I didn't get there. I looked into entrepreneurs to support me to get this done, but I didn't have time, the work I was doing, to actually develop now what are notebooks, pads, what he was talking about. I was actually working with some people to invent this thing, and now it's everywhere. So I was very much a techie for the military, and went to civilian graduate schools and so on. But in the midst of that youth work I was doing concurrently, and then also work in the mission field, working with tribes that have no written language and so on, I really developed a lot of theories on media. I came to understand that my main obstacle in trying to bring unchurched youth to Christ was the media. I came to that conclusion. It's a long story. Many of it, I've told you the stories how I came to those conclusions. And then I realized I needed to, once I get out of the Army, I really need to focus on what's the main thing to work on. Did a study in my life of all the main battles that are out there to fight for the faith, and did a little bit of an analysis for a couple of years, and came to the conclusion that the greatest fight right now in Christianity is media. That was my conclusion. And so I set my life, I shifted it gently at first, and then the Lord swung it over completely that direction. And not really fully intending to, went back to school to get some scholarly research, some scientific research backing on my theories about what media is doing especially to the youth culture, but to the church in general. So I've been struggling for a long time since I became a believer with the problems in the church, and over again it pointed back to this cultural shift that's been going on. We've been undergoing based on media and entertainment. So in the middle of my schoolwork one day, and the funny question that hit me as I was doing research was, what about the Amish? What about the Amish? They don't do media. Do they? I don't know. I've never met an Amish. I don't even know what they are. I didn't know Anabaptists were Amish or Amish Anabaptists. I didn't know any of that. Um, so I must find the Amish. So how do you find the Amish? I went online, searched for the Amish, and that's how I ended up on Corey Anderson's website. I didn't know who he was. I knew none of this. Ended up at Fellowship Haven, and Gertie Troyer just been a tremendous blessing to me. Just led me into and finding a people group serious about following the Bible, not a portion of your life that is you commit to God, but your life committed to God. To see that perfect? No. Problems? Yes, of course. I joke, one thing that I find that Beachy constituency could do to eliminate all problems is get rid of all the people. Okay. So, anyways, when I was there, and how did I end up at the ministers' meeting? Well, this man used to call me now and then and talk to me about what I was doing and encouraging me. Really, an encourager. I didn't know who he was, but he would call me now and then and ask me questions. What am I doing? And I'm glad you're there helping out and so on. And And then he said, we have this ministers meeting. We'd really like you to come. At that point, I was the only man at Fellowship Haven, and I was sort of adopted into the interim pastor. And he really encouraged me to come, and I finally met him at the ministers meeting in Hutchinson, Kansas. And that was David L. Miller. I didn't know who he was. Just this man used to call me and encourage me. And so I owe a lot to David L. Miller. I'm sorry for his loss. And so I showed up at this ministers meeting, and some of you remember me. You may not recognize me, but you may remember me, because at that point, I was sporting a shaved head with no facial hair, and I may even have had a tie on. I don't know. And so I had these interesting responses, and that one of the first ones was, "So what brings you here?" And then I explained, and they would hear Fellowship Haven. Oh, okay, I know who you are. Or the other one was, "So are you a reporter?" And that was fun. So that's a little bit of a synopsis of who I am. I'm steeped in technology. I was raised, I would say a good portion of my early childhood raised on a television. My earliest pictures of me are sitting on the floor watching television. My mom was one of the early ones who discovered the babysitting abilities of television. Got off television when I became a believer, unintentionally, but got completely off of television in 1984. So I stopped watching television decades ago, and movies soon after that, and just recognized the changes in my own life because of that. And that led to me figuring out a lot of issues with the youth, and I was working with youth, always experimenting, getting them off of getting off of media for a little while and see what happened. And typical their parents, what's happened? My child is talking to me, things like that. And okay, so I've spoken at a lot of churches, and I know some people have heard some of my messages. CV, I'm not going to go through my material on media effects. I'm going to touch on it, but this is a minister's meeting, and this is to the shepherds of the flock, God's representatives in a sense, those that have care and trust over God's precious sheep. And so I thought more about shifting my talk tonight to address that address the media issue, but in light of the men that are here. So I want to look at some aspects of you as shepherds in light of media and technology, and see if we can't get our minds straight on some things that are going on. So I know that when you're on a heavy preaching schedule, if you're a small church, you're preaching a lot, or you're speaking a lot, you come to a meeting like this, and you go, I get to sit and listen. Yes? You get to listen? Sorry, not tonight. Tonight I want you to turn your minds on. I know you're going to anyways. But I sort of want to treat this not as just a man up preaching. I really want this to be sort of a mental discussion. Whereas when you go through things, I want your minds working and looking. When we turn to the scriptures, looking for things that maybe that spark when we talk about this battle we're in. That you're also searching, not just listening to me. Okay? So I want to fire your minds up. I say like I want to get my mind on something that's get my mind firing on all two cylinders. So let's look at shepherding. Just a little bit of another perspective that I want to give you of what I'm looking at is before we start. I'd like to try to give this illustration about what I was trying to do with the outside church out there and the mess it is. Coming into the Anabaptist realm only showed me how much more of a mess it is. Okay? I mean, there's believers out there. Yes, they're trying hard. Yes, but it's a mess. And I know I work with a lot of youth, and I know a lot of youth are gravitating towards a lot of things there. And I want to give some pointers on that. That's one of my biggest worries is this drift. And I'll touch on that towards the end of the message. But I used to ask, I like to sort of put a hypothetical out there. Some of you some do your yard work or put in sheds, and you do lots of work around houses. And can you imagine going to wealthy person's backyard and you go in there, or maybe you're an EMT and you're called, or a police or something, you're called to a house and they have a pool and there's a drowning. Or you walk in and there's a drowning. So you go to the pool and you look at the pool and there's two people in the pool. And one is thrashing in the middle of the pool, thrashing and screaming help. And you look, you're about to take care of it. You look and there's another body on the bottom. There's a body on the bottom of the pool. Who do you go for first? You go for the one that's thrashing. You get that one. And see, my whole perspective in this, my whole goal that I launched towards was the body on the bottom of the pool. That's what I was aiming towards. And to my delight to find the plain people who I knew nothing about are more the ones thrashing. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to get ourselves on dry ground on this, or else we'll be on the bottom too. I had a phone call from a Marine colonel last night. And based on some of this talk, called me and said, I just want to tell you thank you for what you told me. This was about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, talked about this topic. He said, because a bunch of us this weekend just sat around trying to figure out what's wrong with Christianity, what's wrong with us. And it all comes back to what media has done to the church. He called me last night on the phone, tell us just down the street as we were coming in, tell me that. So there's people out there that are starting to discover it also, that there's a problem out there. My fear is us drifting towards the place where those people who are waking up are saying, how do we get out of this? Okay? Let's look at shepherding. Let's turn to, first of all, John 21. I want to look at John 21 for a moment. And this is where Jesus is, in a sense, reconciling with Peter. And I know there's a lot in this. We can unpack it in a lot of ways. But I just want to focus for a minute on this discussion that Jesus has with Peter, starting in 15. I'm using New King James here. Of course, Peter had gathered some disciples and said, let's go fishing. He's out there fishing, and then Jesus shows up. And they have breakfast. This conversation. And so when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these? Possibly these other disciples. Do you love me more than these disciples? He said, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, feed my lambs. Feed my lambs, my individual lambs, feed them. He said the second time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? And he said, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And he said to him, tend my sheep. It's interesting, and I know in the King James it has feed and feed, but it's not. It's two different words. One's boka, the other one is, I forgot now. I have it written down here, but it's a different word. It means actually shepherd. The first one is feed my lambs. This one's shepherd my sheep. A different thing. It's a different. He said the third time, Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. So there's actually three different statements here. Peter, feed my lambs. My individual lambs, feed them. Second, Peter, shepherd, a body. sheep, shepherd a body. Third, feed that body. So we have these three things that we're going through. And I know that a lot of what Christendom thinks the pastorate is about feeding. Feeding the sheep on Sunday morning. People are like, want to go to a church where I can get fed. And it's true. It's true. But I want to hit this other part, and that is the shepherd. See, there's a difference between being a pastor and a preacher. The pastor gives the message out, it's nice, but what is this pastoring that he's talking about? This tending of the sheep. And I just want to look at, there's a lot in there, but I want to just focus on two aspects of it as they aim towards this meaty issue. That's why I want to look at that. Now, if we look also at the verses we talked about last night, David. Okay, if we turn to 1 Samuel 16, I'll just not have to turn there, but we have this interesting situation, of course, David and Bathsheba, where God lets the man after his own heart fall into grievous sin. I think because he knew he'd return. I don't know why he would do that, but he did it. And we have this interesting transition of roles. We have David, the shepherd boy, who's now king. And he has the encounter with Bathsheba, the pregnancy. And he calls Uriah. And it's interesting what happens with Uriah. We have Uriah, of course, Uriah, go home. Be with your wife. What does Uriah do? No, I'm going to sleep on the ground. My soldiers are sleeping on the ground. They're sleeping on rock. I'm not sleeping in a bed. If they're sleeping on rock, I'm sleeping on rock. His heart was so into his soldiers, caring for his soldiers. That's what a commander does. That he refused, even get drunk, whatever. Get him drunk. Still, I cannot. I will not. Because he had the heart of a shepherd. Do you see? Now, I sort of identify with this. I was a commander when I was in the army. And I will also preface that I understand and embrace non-resistance. Actually, the Lord sort of beat non-resistance into me before meeting you all. Made my life very difficult until I realized this is the path for the Christian, is non-resistance. I didn't have it fine-tuned like you have, so when I use military examples, like Paul did, I'm going to use military examples because they're illustrative and they're part of my life. But as a commander, I learned a great lesson. Because as a commander, you're a shepherd. You're in charge of it. Sometimes, at my level, I was a junior officer, but I was in charge of over 100 people and their families, their wives, their children. I was in charge of everything. I was overseas, everything that happened. There's a saying in the Army that the commander is responsible for everything that happens or doesn't happen, and there's no excuse. Something happens, one of your soldiers does something bad enough, you had nothing to do with it, you are subject to being removed. Because it's your environment. You're responsible for that environment. Now, that's not the lesson. The lesson is this. Something I learned. And that is, in being a good commander, it wasn't about seeking glory, having the uniform, or the parade, or getting accolades. It wasn't any of that. That was sort of having everybody salute you or barking orders at people. You know what I learned made a good commander? You're a person who sought out problems and solved them. The good commander seeks problems and solves them. And this is not just a military thing. in the business world. I learned this. I was running a simulation development, and my day was spent looking for problems and solving them. And when there's a problem here, I go there. What's the problem? They need some help. I find the solution, call up, get supply. What is it? Unclear information. What is it? Solve it. And then that person can get back onto work again. And then I'm looking for the next problem. I spent my day doing that. And as a soldier, one thing I learned as a commander, especially in military operations, when you're out there running in the middle of the night, you've been going for 4 or 5 days with no sleep. I learned that I have to spend no sleep for me. I'm out running around looking for problems and finding soldiers in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, freezing rain, trying to get their job done. They can't because something's wrong. And I show up and I go, this is what I need. I can call. I have the authority. I know I've done this before. I fix it, get that soldier going. Now go to the next one. And I made it easy for them by solving problems. Okay? Same thing in business. That's what you solve problems, make things happen. Okay? It had to do with relationships, with equipment, you name it. And I also learned if I found a problem, I saw a little problem, and I didn't do anything about it, guess what happened? Did it go away? No. Guess what happens to problems when you ignore them? They get worse. They grow. And all of a sudden, everything stops because of this problem. And so often, I saw it before. I saw it. I saw the way guy was doing something. Something was wrong with it. I don't know why, and I was too busy, or I heard the knocking of my car. There was this clicking in my car. I hoped it would go away. What happens? Engine seizes. Little light on my panel in my car. Dude, they get worse. This is what you as shepherds need to be about. Taking care of that body. Looking for problems. And it doesn't mean you're looking for problems to punish her. It's only to make things better for your people. Okay? Then there's this second verse I want to go to. It's a bit longer. Turn to John 10. And now Jesus is telling Peter, basically, at the end, we just saw what we just talked about in John 21. Peter, get shepherding. Yes? Get shepherding. And here's where we learn something about shepherding. Oh, I'm sorry. We missed one verse, one portion of that, and I'll just in the last 21. You know, when Jesus said, you know what? When you were younger, Peter, when you were younger, you went and did what you want. But when you get older, they're going to stretch your arms out, and you're going to be led somewhere where you don't want to go. And you know what that was about? His death, because he was going to suffer and die as a shepherd. And this is where he now goes. I go back to Jesus' teaching on shepherding. Now, I know this has to do with Christ the shepherd, but I'm asking you, shepherds, now, as you look at this scripture, what's in there for you? What's in there for you as the shepherd? Shepherd of the sheep that God has given you. John chapter 10, and starting in verse 1. Most surely I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs up some other way, the same as a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. Now you can look at that door right here. In a sense, could be the Father, bringing Jesus. There's some things we're not going to go there now. To him, the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. something interesting that I've been on the mission field and I've been in the islands, and I remember seeing sheep all get mixed up together. And I asked, how do you get these sheep apart again? And this shepherd goes, well, how do you get a dog to come to you? Do you call his name? And it comes to you, right? That's what they do. They just start, and a lot of you have shepherding background. I had no shepherding background. They would call, and the sheep all of a sudden would split up. They all come to their, okay? Verse 5. Yet they will by no means follow a stranger, but flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. Jesus used this illustration, but they did not understand the things which he spoke to them. Then Jesus said to them, most assuredly I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All whoever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone comes by me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come that they may have life and they may have it more abundantly. And this is the point that I want to think about for us. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. But a hireling is he is who is not the shepherd, one who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. The wolf catches the sheep and scatters them. The hireling flees because he is a hireling and does not care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my sheep, and I am known by my sheep. As the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and I lay my life down for the sheep. So what's the point here? This is the example. Yes, it's talking about Christ, the central shepherd. Yes, but there's another lesson there. The good shepherd lays his life down for the sheep. The hireling doesn't care. When there's a problem that comes up, the hireling doesn't care. At 2:00 in the morning, problem, the hireling doesn't care. The true shepherd gives up his life. Your sleep, your comfort. It's a duty. What a duty we have to take care of God's sheep. But the important point here, this second aspect of shepherding, is that the good shepherd defends the sheep. He defends them. He knows danger comes, and he takes action and will put himself on the line. We go back to David. You know the story. I don't need to recount it. When he was about to go into combat, and what are you going to do? How are you going to do this? This Goliath is going to kill you. And he said, well, I'd like to go ahead and go to that. If I didn't. Yeah, here we are in 1 Samuel 17. Oops. Let's see, where am I? Let me get my verse here. I didn't write the verse down here. Sorry, I can't find it right here, but I'll just go ahead and paraphrase it. And that is, he said, when I was taking care of my father's sheep, a bear and a lion came. And he says, I guess the impression I smote, sort of gives I smote maybe the bear, dropped the lamb. And then what happens? The lion. Did the lion run? No. The lion turned on David. And he says he took him by the beard and he smote him or killed him We think of the shepherd as going out there with a staff and a rod. Thy staff and thy rod, they comfort me. And when he's working with those sheep, he's out taking care of them, and he uses that rod and that staff. And when those sheep get too close to the wood line, get them away from the wood line. Get them away, because he knows what lurks in the wood line, in those woods. And at night, he's out there at 2 o'clock on a morning, on a rainy night, and out comes the predators. And that's when his next two weapons come out, the sling and the knife. I think a knife got the lion. Maybe, I don't know exactly. It doesn't really say. But then it was time to take action in defense. And the deal is that his defense isn't throw rocks and the lion goes away. Throw rocks and the lion comes at you. And now not only are you defending the sheep, you're defending yourself now. And there's a lesson there for us. What are we doing? And we're going to come back to the media in a second. But what are we doing as shepherds to defend ourselves against those things that are coming at us? Do you care? Do you care that something's going on with your people, with your flock, with this media thing? Who are the bears? Who are the wolves? Who are the lions in our age? In past time, again at the beginning of the radical Reformation, it was organized religion and the government, this collusion. That was the enemy. And now and then the government will cause trouble. The Anabaptists have not had these great troubles recently, except for sporadically. And maybe we point to mammon and purposelessness sometimes, because we've got all of our fleshly needs being met. And what are we doing? What's up here? Where are we going? Well, now there's a bear. And it's a big bear. And that bear is media technology. Now, I agree. Media technology, can it be a good thing? It can be a very good thing. Oh, yes. I'm not saying no to media technology. The problem is what comes with it. What's the Faustian bargain? If anybody's heard that before, in order to get a wonderful life, that's the Faustian bargain. What do I have to trade to Satan? Your soul. You get the life, you lose your soul. The Faustian bargain. What is it? As I give in my talks, I give the illustration, and some of you have heard me before, the great tsunami of entertainment media, electronic entertainment media, being the focal point of cultural change that came in. It hit Western culture, blindsided Western culture, didn't know what happened, doesn't know. It's looking back now going, what happened to us? And they look, and now there's more and more writings about this. They didn't know that going to the movies 5 nights a week was going to change them. They didn't know that back in the 1915, when they all flocked into it and popular culture began. That's been my quest, figure this out. But in line with what I just spoke about, you as pastors are now facing a plethora of problems directly related to media use. The problems, the personal problems, the relational problems, not all of them, but so many of them are connected to what media is doing to the person. I'm not saying that the media device itself being used in church or something like that, or maybe everybody sitting around the table looking in their devices. To me, that's a hideous thing. But I'm talking about the effects beyond what media does to you. The term is called mediatization. It's a new term in the scholarly realm. It's coming out of Europe because there's some European groups that are really trying to nail this down. What does it do? Mediatization, almost like hypnotization. Hypnotize, where someone is hypnotized and they come under the power of somebody else. Media, in a sense, media use hypnotizes you. It's more than that. And for tonight, I don't have the time to go through it. When I come to churches, I give it a long, exhaustive, maybe sometimes torturous explanation. Because you can't tell about it in just a minute, or else everybody would be doing it. It takes some thought and some study. But my conclusion I try to bring by the end of the week is the media you use changes who you are. It changes who you are. It changes you in many, many ways. Let me find my notes. I always focus first that it changes you sociologically. It changes your relational desires, your relational patterns, your relational abilities. The crux of Christianity is relationship. Relationship with God, relationship with others. And when we play with media, consuming it, playing on it, overuse, you impact your relational capabilities and your relational proclivities, your desires. They're changed, especially your children. I studied it so hard, and I've worked with so many different groups prior to the Anabaptists. I could go into settings, I'd go into a youth group, talking to the youth group, and generally within about 5 minutes, I could pick out the heavy media users. And I could pick out the homeschoolers whose parents didn't let them use media. 5 minutes, you pick that out, really. And then I would go validate it. And I'd go talk to the youth and ask them, so what are the hot movies right now? Which is the video games that are on? And I've done this with groups, and I've actually done it with groups when parents were there. We go, watch this, parents. I'm going to show you. And I'll do a contest with them and demonstrate. Sure enough, almost 100%. I could pick this out. And again, that's not the topic for tonight, but it all has to do with relational proclivities, desires, so on. Actually, media use changes your cognitive abilities. Your thinking gets changed by media use. You become who you are with. Your brain is designed to become just like the person you're with. In neuroscience, that it's a common thing. The person you're with, your brain structure will actually shape to be like the brain structure of the person you're with. Your husband, your wife, your parents, the people you're with. You become like them, and correspondingly, you play on media devices and you pick up, it's called media logic. You pick up the technological processes. You begin to act like the media. And you have a demand for it and a desire for it. So it begins to shape your mental processes. They are shaped by the media you're using. This is not me. I'm not making this up. This is studies out there now and arguments and books warning, trying to explain what happened. It changes your affections, turns you from being a thinker into a feeler, making your decisions based on the impression you got instead of being logically thinking through things. And finally, and I'm really happy to see this, the writers out there, they're saying it's doing something to us spiritually. It's doing something to our spiritual desire. These are not Christians. These are saying it's doing something. That's the bear. What's the lion? The second part of this research I'm doing, the whole concept of popular culture, the culture of the day that's out there. We have a new culture which has never existed. Up to 100 years ago, it didn't exist. There wasn't one. Culture was a local thing. It was more of a family, blood, proximal location thing, the way people worked. But starting with in the entertainment industry, with early movies, early silent films, it started then, grew into this explosion of pumping a new culture out there, popular culture, through television in the 1950s. And then on now, it's being, in a sense, supported through the internet, the way it works. But pushing this new popular culture. What is this popular culture? It's a complete different value system. I wouldn't say it's opposite Christian values. It's just really just different. In some places, extremely opposite. But it's this attitude of life, of entertainment. You consume entertainment, and you begin to believe that's the highest value. That I'm entertained, my whole duty is to be entertained. And if you're not entertaining me, then there's something wrong with you. You go to the store out there, the grocery store, and you see the mother shopping, and you see the son or the daughter like with an attitude like, I don't want to be here, and I'm angry that I'm here, and I'm bored, and all that. That's popular culture. That's being pumped right into them, and they're just reflecting what they've been taught. One of the scary things about that somewhat of an ability I'd been able to pick up to find out which of these youth were doing ministry or media heavily, I could pick it out. I see it sometimes in the playing circles now. I can pick it out. A couple times I see a young man, I go, wow, he's giving off mediation. He mediatized. It seems so mediatized. I must be wrong. Talk to him, watch him. Sure enough, Saturday night television shows, or DVD, not television, DVDs at night. The family didn't mind. Grew him up on the Veggie Tales. Get him into the media. It's all good there. No. It's not just the content. It's not just the content. It's the medium itself, which changes you. And they grow up to be, one, to be entertained. The second is to be entertaining. They think the goal in life is entertainment. That's this pop culture. A carnival, there's this term, carnival-esque, means risky. I'm doing dangerous, risky things. Look at me, I'm the one who takes chances. My appearance, modesty goes out completely. A defiance of authority. Hollywood hates authority. Hollywood hates the concept of discipline. Hates it. They have a war on discipline. They've been effective. They've been infecting all of the I call them agents who are affecting you. The main, I could have done a chart of this. The main agents that are affecting your lives. Of course, media, mass media and entertainment. Which is pumping this pop culture. They're the main source of it. Professional education. Because I'm in professional education. I see everything has to be entertaining out there. The government's swayed by the media so much. The stars are in the White House. All of those that going on. But the two big ones, the economy. Because now we're all connected to the economy. And we're breathing in popular culture. All the pop culture that they're breathing in every night on television or on all the things they do, they now expose it to you. Is your guard up? Are you aware of that? That you're now going to you're going to drink in some of that? I'm not saying don't be around them, but you have to be prepared. You have to have your own agency to not only withstand the influence that comes, but also to exert influence the other direction. I'll touch on that in the end. And then the most powerful one I see right now, popular religion. Popular religion. What's that? That's the religion of the day, the mass media, the mega church, who basically Christianized popular culture. It's about entertainment, the skilled preacher who can capture the attention, who can dazzle, the theater with, I don't know, I've been to these churches, sometimes 13 giant screens around, all black. We went to one. We had a week and we were in a different place. My wife and I, we went to one. Just let's go see one. Just check it out, see what's going on. And my wife, bless her heart, she was almost nauseously sick because it was so video stimulus, because that's what the people want. Popular Christianity, a little bit out there, but popular Christianity is the one that scares me the most about your youth. Especially your youth who have been prepared for that type of entertaining world by your DVDs. That they love the DVDs, they love entertainment on Saturday nights. They love to be able to watch this stuff. And then why can't we have Christianity that's as entertaining as my little device or my screen or whatever I want? Why can't Christianity be entertaining too? And lo and behold, there is an entertaining Christianity. Popular Christianity. Entertaining. You know, I don't know how much time I have, but I want to sort of give an illustration of something of what's going on with popular Christianity. Because it looks like it's growing and it looks exciting, and all of the mega churches are changing the world. Look on their websites. They tell you we're impacting the world. Yes, right? They all say that. You know, down in Virginia Beach, there's a body of water called Back Bay. It's a very interesting body of water. See, it's actually the top of whatever the beginning of the Outer Banks. Used to be one of the best fishing bodies of water, bass fishing in the country. Back in the 70s, fantastic place to fish. And then one day this storm, huge storm, and the ocean came over the banks, washed into the bay. So the bay became very salty for I guess for about a year or something. It was just a lot of salt because it washed over and then it stopped. And what happened was the bass fishing got better. And so the government got involved. And I said, wow, this salt water has made the bass fishing better. So the government put in a pipe system to pump salt water into Back Bay. They're pumping salt water in, and the bass fishing got better. And it got better every year. And they're the biggest bass tournaments going on. Boats from all the people bring their boats there, and they have these bass tournaments, rush out there, and you go to any place you find grass reed, go there, cast in the water, bass after bass. And then it stopped. It stopped. No bass. What happened? Well, what happened is the salt water started killing the grass. So the grass, the environment, started diminishing. There was less. And so the bass that were there, where do they feed? At the grass. So the less grass, more bass. More bass? No, less bass. More bass there, but the population was diminishing. And the second thing the saltwater did, stop the reproduction of the bass. They can't reproduce in salt water. So it looked fantastic. Fantastic. Look, this is the best place for bass fishing. Then it ended. Now, popular Christianity is pumping out messages out there about how they're changing the world. Their entertainment Christianity is doing fantastic things for the world, for Christ. A lot of your young people are buying that message. What impact are they having? What impact is the megachurch having? Fewer small churches. Small churches closing because they can't compete. They can't put out the entertainment. They try and they fail. And there's children who go to those, their children know they're trying, but it isn't good enough. I want to go to the big entertaining Christianity. What impact is this whole popular Christianity having on the morality in America? Huh? Any? Divorce? The social problems we're having in our country? But the mega churches are changing? No, they're not. I think we have the same Back Bay situation. People are scrambling to get to those mega churches, and I know lots of people in those mega churches. Lots of them. Been to lots of them. Been part of them. No standards. Divorce? Divorce and remarriage is, don't bring it up. You want to get in trouble? Bring it up. So I fear that your young people who are getting enticed that direction are listening to the, I hate to use the term, propaganda. They're advertising. Those churches advertise themselves. They don't advertise the problems. They advertise that they're changing the world. They don't, one local near us, they don't advertise that they've had 2 women on the ministry team commit suicide. They don't advertise that. No, that's not on their advertisement. That's not on their website. On their ministry team involved committing suicide. So this is the bear. I could go into much more detail. I call this the lion. Pop culture comes in and changes your value system. This is the deal. When you're watching entertainment, when you're letting your youth watch entertainment, when you have lax standards on it, entertainment, when you watch something, you are not the same person before and after. You have changed. Something has changed in you. You have new memories in your mind that you're now going to interpret reality with, because you interpret reality through memory. That's part of my talk, so I don't have time to go through that. But what's more, when you get into a wonderful, entertaining atmosphere, you're watching something, this is when your values are subject to alteration. Your values are subject to alteration. Your identity is subject to alteration through entertainment. And the third part of that in your value system, there's 3 parts of your value system. Your identity, your beliefs or your values, and your behavior. When your identity goes, your identity changes a little bit. I don't really want to be part of this boring body anymore. I want to be I'm shifting my identity. The values go. Why do we have to be so stiff? Can't we lower our standards here, or lower? Why do we have to be so hard? Well, because when you lower your standards, your identity changes and values follow. Your values will go with it, and your behavior follows that. And then in a few years, what happened to us? Remember the good old days what happened? Incrementally, bit by bit. The media does that without you even knowing it. It begins to change your youth when they're consuming that media, playing on that media. Values are changing, identity is changing. Bit by bit, not like drinking a fifth of gin or something and they're all drunk. Just a little bit at a time, incrementally. So technology, good? Bad? Is alcohol good or bad? Alcohol, good or bad? Well, I mean, a lot of the medicine you take has alcohol in it. A lot of it. It's a good. I'll bet there's some alcohol in some of your medicine cabinets. Alcohol, good. Antiseptic, good. It's a propellant. It's good for some stoves or alcohol stoves. Alcohol's good. Kills germs. Therefore, I think you should own a liquor store and have a bar in your basement. Because alcohol's good, right? You should let's go for it. Just drink away because there's these good things. Drink away. Yeah? Wine's good for your stomach, right? Drink away. Media? Why do we? Come on, it's the same thinking. Media can be very good. And look what it can do to destroy you. Alcohol? When it becomes an entertainment tool, no go. When it becomes a social commodity that wherever we have to get together, we have to have alcohol, there's a problem. When we like to talk about the funny things that happened because we were drinking, there's a problem. When it's a relational necessity, it's a problem. Media the same way. You have to put this in parallel. When you have to use entertainment as an entertainment tool, media as an entertainment tool, I'm not happy unless I'm doing it. Just like alcohol, that's a problem. When it's a social commodity or a relational necessity, I have to have this thing in bed with me. There's a problem. It's like bringing a bottle of whiskey in bed. It's sort of like that. Because we're relational beings. We're supposed to aim for the highest. What's the optimal relationship? Face to face, proximal with people. Let me finish up here. I could go on many routes here, but I want to sort of summarize here. 1 Peter 2:11. 1 Peter 2:11. Dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul. What fleshly lusts? You're allowing yourself to be exposed to all that. Letting your children be exposed, the youth of you're allowing the war to go on. There's a problem, shepherd. There's a problem. Got it? Do you care? You're supposed to go seek problems and fix them. And doesn't look right. The way they're acting, it doesn't look right. Something doesn't look right about them. That's the knock in your engine. You can let it go? No, shepherds. No. The information is all still coming out. The study, we don't have perfect answers for any of this meeting because it keeps changing and it's growing. That is not an excuse for you to not be proactive and get involved. Every one of you men is as smart as I am. You can figure these things out. Get to work. You see a problem, solve it. Look for the problem. What's going on? I may have some education, but that doesn't make someone smart. Defend the flock. Defend the flock. There are things that are warring against your people, and they're warring against you. And like David did, David saw it and he went after it. And it turned on him. He defeated it. And that's my question. How many of us have not yet defeated it so that we can be a successful defender? We've got to be one step above on this. We have to understand it. You can't just be, oh, well, I don't know. I just don't do it. You've got a duty to seek it out, figure it out. I want to add one last thing as a responsibility of leaders. It's the leader's responsibility in an organization, generally speaking, but in shepherding. You know, the shepherd doesn't wake up and go, well, I wonder where the sheep are going today. I guess I'll just follow the sheep where the sheep are going. Well, the sheep seems to go this direction today, so I guess I'll go with the... Does it? What does the shepherd do? Hey, I'm the shepherd, and the sheep's going this direction. I know where the fields are. I know where the safety is. I'm going. And you, as shepherd, need to cast that vision. What is that vision of how things should be? What's that end state I aim for? And the second is, what's the process for getting there? Because then I know, once I have those two, I have a better time figuring out the problems that I got to solve to make this thing work. I know better now what dangers there are to that. And we have this, I think we need to rearrange our attitude here. There's an attitude that, well, media's here and it's changing things, and there's just this, slide, and, we just want to try and slow down. There's not anybody say this, but it's sort of apparent to me. And, we sort of want to slow down the slide. We see this movement, and what can we do to slow it down? Now, wait a second. Colossians 3. Colossians 3. What's that chapter about? It's about vision. Colossians 3, the beginning of 1. If ye then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth at the right hand of God. Set your affection on things which are above, not on things that are on the earth. And it goes through a long explanation. We don't have time now to go through that explanation. But what's that vision you're casting, shepherd? That vision needs to be not slow down the retrograde movement. No, man of God. It's a vision of higher things. We move for higher things, higher levels of relational communication, higher levels of community, of godliness, higher levels. And if anything, it should be, instead of looking at it, oh, how do we slow down the slide? It's something like, oh, this media technology it's sort of trying to slow down our climb. What's our climb to higher levels of godliness? It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It can be hard. Yeah. as a commander. When I was a commander in the Army, I had to learn something. I had to not worry about being disliked. I had to sort of learn that. So I made them. One thing when I was a commander, a young Christian, I did things that I found out later I wasn't allowed to do, like no pornography, period, in the barracks. Soldiers filled with it, no alcohol in the barracks, period. I didn't know that was illegal for me to do, but I did it. But later on, they marveled that we were the only company that didn't have all sorts of drunken fights in the barracks. I made them do things they didn't want to do. I set standards, they didn't like them. They didn't like them. Until about halfway through, about a year into this command, all of a sudden, they started bragging. We're the unit that did best at this. We're the unit that did best at that. We're the unit that could run. I could tell you stories. I don't want to try. It sounds like I'm bragging, but it was just because they are standards. The other units didn't have standards. I said, bring standards in. Suddenly they had this identity that we're this company. And we don't act like those other people. I mean, it's sort of a pride thing, and we don't want to do that. But standards, don't let those standards slide. Standards feed identity. Remember? Identity goes, values go, behaviors go. Which is it? Are we going to drift downstream with everybody else? Are we moving up? I challenge us. Challenge me, I challenge you. One life. One life. What's it going to be? The utmost? You becoming the utmost disciple that you could be? Your flock, your sheep, that you tend and shepherd, them being the utmost disciples they could be. Will they always like it? No. It's the retrospect. Yes, in retrospect, that was great. Daniel. Eat the king's food. Be like them. Be like the Babylonians. Eat their food. Don't be different. Go along with the flow. No. Daniel said no. Bow to the image. Just go along to get along. No. You have a heritage that my wife and I are a bit jealous of. I fear your young people don't know that heritage, don't understand what they've been given. Don't let the culture erase that. Feed the lambs, pastors. Feed the lambs. Shepherd the sheep. Feed the sheep. It's your duty. Let me pray for us. Father in heaven, I ask you now that